Okay, ZBA, we are live, we are recording, phone lines are off, and you are good to go.
Thank you, Matt. I'd like to welcome everyone to the work session of the Town of East Hampton Zoning Board of Appeals meeting April 12th. We'll get to work. We have a number of administrative applications this evening we're going to start with. So therefore, I'll read the first one. The first applicant is OSA at 13 Clamshell Avenue in East Hampton, Suffolk tax map number 300-74-5-8. And that is to allow a 2,220 square foot patio to remain within 150 foot of wetlands. Eleni?
Hi, good evening. This is a possible administrative application. The pool that is shown here on the property is legally existing. They got an administrative permit in 2016 to construct the pool and the pool equipment over here. What they constructed without permits was the patio. So the patio is located between the house and the legally existing pool. The wetlands are over here. They're within a scenic easement, and the area over here is well vegetated. The board has any questions?
The patio, is it, it's,
How far?
it's not within, is it within 150 feet?
It's within 150 feet.
It's between the pool that was approved and the house.
Yeah, and the pool itself is 100 feet from the wetlands. So it's more than 100 feet from the wetlands.
Oh, okay. So it's about 110 or more.
Yeah.
Away. Okay.
Okay. Everybody okay with this?
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with this as well. So this
So
is.
that's you, isn't it?
Hampton, that's me. So therefore, I'll make a motion to, for OSA 13 Clamshell Avenue in East Hampton, Suffolk tax map number 300-74-5-8 to allow the application to proceed administratively.
Second.
I concur.
Concur.
And I concur.
Thank you. Next is Emmanuel Nissenbaum at 29 Sandpiper Lane in Amagansett, Suffolk tax map number 300-175-4-11. And that is to allow 2 slate walkways and curbing along a driveway to remain within duneland and 150 foot of freshwater wetlands.
Great. So this is a survey for Mr. Nissenbaum. This residence had burned down in a fire about 2 years ago, and they received a building permit to rebuild in place and kind. The most recent CO on the property was from 1993, and at that time, it did not show the driveway or the walkways. Mr. Nissenbaum has provided photos showing that they were there in the early 90s. It's just that surveys at that time didn't always include, driveway, walkway, things like that. So it's really just a replacement in place and kind of what had been there. They're not getting any closer to the wetlands than they were. There is a large scenic easement on the property as well.
And about how far over 100 are those?
These are within 100 feet from the wetlands, but they are in place and kind. So
Just a question.
Duneland?
I know. It's a question on when you do something like this that was pre-existing like that they're looking to legalize. So the new updated survey would show the coverage calculations on it?
yes, it does show the coverage calculations.
Okay. Obviously they're within. So, but I was just curious because the old survey would not have had that information.
No, it didn't have that information on it.
Will the planning department be looking for any kind of give back from them for getting approvals for this? Are you talking about any re-veg or anything else?
We haven't talked about any re-veg with this one. There is a large scenic easement on the property that was untouched. And it's pristine dune land in the back, and there's wetlands in the back of the property here as well. But that is mostly untouched besides, what was affected by the fire. The edge of clearing is just along here, and that's remained the same.
Thank you.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, this is in my district. I'm good with it. It looks like maybe 2/3 of this is untouched, so that's pretty substantial, I think.
Okay.
I'm okay with it. Yeah, I am too.
Okay, so I'll make a motion in the matter of Emmanuel Nissenbaum at 29 Sandpiper Lane, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-175-4-11 to allow this application to proceed administratively.
I'll second it.
Concur.
I concur as well. Thank you. Wayne, do you think we should look at the next two in tandem?
Sure,
I
yeah.
mean, I think because they are
Right next to each
basically
other.
the same mirrored applications. I'll read them both in and then we can deal with them. Gottsell Development, I'm sorry, the first one is GDC Montauk, MTK LLC at 33 Benson Drive, Montauk, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-30-1-8. And that is to construct a residence, septic tank system, outdoor shower, swimming pool, pool patio, decking, and porch within 150 foot of freshwater wetlands. The second one is Gottsell Development Comp LLC, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-30-1-9, and that is to construct a residence, septic system, outdoor shower, swimming pool, pool patio, decking, and porch within 150 foot of freshwater wetlands.
See if I can pull them up right next to each other. If they're in the right order, which I think they are. So these two properties are on Benson Drive in Montauk in the Ditch Plains area. They're currently vacant, vegetated, undeveloped properties. They're proposing, each house is 2,200 square feet, and they're proposing swimming pools
20.
as well. They're meeting the 100-foot setback, which allows us to bring it forward for administrative review. There are no variances here, meeting all dimensional setbacks as well. They're proposing scenic easements. Both are proposing scenic easements. The Gottsell Development scenic easement is slightly larger. The GDC MTK one is smaller on the other side of the property. They're meeting their clearing. They don't require any variances at all. So it's just if the board feels comfortable with this moving forward
And they
administratively.
are offering up some small easements.
Okay, one's very small. That, how much is that one? Is that 33, that one? One on the left?
Yeah, the GDC MTK is much smaller. Don't have the exact size of the easement, but I can get that for you.
I'm always leery about a pool, and this is Ditch Plains. I did go past the properties though, and they look relatively flat and elevated. I don't know, I have mixed feelings on it. What about you, Ed?
Yeah, well, I had some concerns. I went by the property as well, and I think that the second one here, which was Gottsell, that one seemed to have a fairly dramatic depression near the road. I did have a conversation with Eleni about this, and she explained to me that the property did not have wetlands on it, and it was kind of surprising to both of us to be in Ditch Plains and not have wetlands that's any closer than this to this house. And they are they're heavily vegetated, mostly I guess I would say with invasives, and it's a pretty sporadic. My concern was when I first looked at it, this board generally doesn't look the other way on this kind of full development. There's a house, there's a pool, there's a lot of clearing here before we're done. But I will say that our conversation that we've had, that you've mentioned that, we'll see a certain amount of an easement added to this, and that they're doing basically staying within the limits of, the constraints of the building department code on this, that I see that it's not, nearly as frightening as it was when I first looked at it, but other members of the board may have a different attitude about it.
Well, it appears as if the septic system is in the most conforming location as well.
Yes.
That all looks good. One concern I have, we know Ditch Plains has become a mixed bag of smaller, original kind of properties and larger. And Benson seemed, when I drive, east to west on it, seems to have more of the older style one-story houses. And these are both 2 stories now. And it's also a very wet street as you go west on it. But, I don't know, looking at it in discussions, as mentioned with Eleni, I guess I could let it go administratively.
Yeah, it's my area as well, and I'm, after the conversations we've had and seeing that it is being done, as the chair says, about as effectively as you can in setting placing the septic system. So I'm willing to go with this administratively as well.
And I'm appreciative of our Montauk contingent doing such a diligent job of this. So I'm going to follow your lead and also agree.
You can have a hearing. You want a hearing?
And also, it will be posted, and if there is any public concern,
Yeah.
they'll let us know.
Agreed.
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Get a motion?
So you want me to do a motion for both right
Now, you
away?
do
or-
one and I'll do one.
Okay. We'll do the first one, the little scenic easement.
Okay. In the matter of
Sharing is caring.
GDC Montauk LLC, 33 Benson Drive, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-30-1-8. I'd like to make a motion to allow this application to proceed administratively.
I'll second.
Concur.
Concur.
I concur as well. Thank you.
Okay, and I will make a motion on Godsell Development Comp LLC, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-30-1-9 at 35 Benson Drive to allow this application to be processed administratively.
I'll second that as well.
I concur.
I concur.
I concur as well. Thank you. Next up, we have John Alsop at 89 Mulford Lane in Amagansett, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-106-2-13. And that's to demolish an existing residence deck, shed, patio, and septic system, and to construct a new residence fencing and sanitary system with 150 foot of freshwater wetlands.
Okay, so this is the survey. This is a redevelopment. This property is currently developed. They're proposing to demolish the existing residence and construct a new residence. This is the 150-foot line, so it's just barely within NRSP jurisdiction, which is why we're bringing it forward for administrative review. It will be an upgraded sanitary system in further from the wetlands than the current system, and it's mostly just the deck and a small portion of the residence that's within 150 feet of the wetlands.
Other than that, there's no other variances?
No variances.
No area variances?
Nope. Yeah, it meets all dimensional setbacks, everything else.
Yeah, and this is in my area, and I took a look at it, and it seems to me to be an improvement over current circumstances. That the housing is centered on the property, the new septic, et cetera. So I'm good with this going administratively.
Yeah, I visited the site as well, and I agree with Member Brenneman on this, and that is that this is a very narrow lot. I think it's 50 feet wide. There's not many options here. It seems as the only place you could set a house is about where it is. And the fact that it might have moved closer to the road would have necessitated finding a different location for the septic. So I'm happy to the way this has been set up to allow it to go administratively as well.
How much larger is it than the current house? It's a very cute house today.
It is a small house today. It is, the building coverage on this one, existing is 891 square feet. So that's just the footprint of the house. That was a one-story house. And they're proposing 1,169 square feet.
Okay. I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with it.
Okay, so in the matter of John Alsop at 89 Mulford Lane, Amagansett, Suffolk County, tax map number 300-106-2-13, I make a motion to allow this application to proceed administratively.
I'll second that.
Concur.
I concur.
And I concur as well. Thank you. Next, we have Mast One LLC at 31 Association Road in Wayne Scott, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-201-1-8.2, and that's to remove roughly 8,000 square foot of Phragmites within a wetland.
Okay, so this is an invasive species removal permit. They had an administrative NRSP in 2014 for a 5-year permit to remove Phragmites from this property. That went from 2014 to 2019. Between 2019 and now, they have not been removing the Phragmites since the permit expired. So there is a fair bit of Phragmites on the property currently. The areas in pink are where they're proposing to remove. It would be cutting. There's no herbicide, nothing like that. It's, I believe, hand cutting of the Phragmites, and it would be for the same permit that they previously had, which was a
So
5-year.
and then I asked Eleni on this as well. So the same permit, the same methods, means and methods that was in that permit. So it's a continuation of the same, that it's already been vetted out, in my opinion, right?
Yeah, same methods, everything's the same.
How much did they remove in that 5 years? You know?
I don't have that information. We can ask them to provide that, because that would be something that'd be interesting data to have, that how much was removed, and then also how much they do if this goes through, how much they do it this time
I
around.
almost wonder if it would be good to have a hearing for the public to hear.
Yeah, it is an interesting question. I mean, is there a notification process with that as far as when they do it and all that?
Yes, so we write into the permit that they have to notify us before they start the work. And then when it's complete, each time they do it, so that we could go out there and actually witness them doing the work.
And in that 5 years from 2014, did they continue to do it each year?
I believe they did. They did it every year.
Interesting.
Let me ask, is there any seasonal restriction on when they can do this cutting?
I will have to look into that. I think they were proposing to do it at the start of the growing season.
Right.
And then after, but I'll have to double check.
So the
that.
cutting would be a spring and fall cutting, basically, or, late fall, early winter cutting, the second one, right? Something like
Yes,
that.
yeah. Yeah, and it's hand cutting. It's not done with machinery.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm okay with this.
I'm all right with it.
I am too.
Yeah, I guess I am. Like I said, I think it might be a good hearing for the public to hear.
Yeah, the
Getting rid of
information.
Phragmites.
What?
What?
Yeah, I would agree. It might be interesting to track that stuff and see how it's going.
I'm okay with it.
If you're all okay with it, I'm
So I
okay.
make a motion then, in the case of Mass One LLC, 31 Association Road, Wayne-Scott, Suffolk tax map number 300-201-1-8.2, to allow the application to proceed administratively.
I'll second it.
I'll concur.
I concur.
I concur.
Thank you. So next we have 32 Star Island Associates LLC at 48 Star Island Road, Montauk, Suffolk tax map number 300-006-04-15.1 and 16.1, and that is to replace and maintain existing bulkheads, docks, and pilings in place and in kind.
Okay, so this is Tyler's application. I'm just covering it for him. It's to replace in place and kind. I believe it's 140 linear feet of bulkheading. It's in this green area here. But it's an in place and kind replacement.
And this is right at Star Island Marina, just adjacent to the parking lot. Then it's just slightly to the, what is that, the south of the parking lot?
Yeah, I can zoom out so you can see it. There's the parking lot.
Yeah.
It's just right up here.
So this is the Gurney's Yacht Club location. I was on the wrong side of the
Is that where they
street.
clean the fish?
Yeah. I had a conversation with Tyler about this because we had some concerns. Remember, Berger and I went looking for it, couldn't quite find exactly where we were looking for, and then we got it. We were instructed correctly by Tyler Borsak, and he said, that there had been some other ideas, and this is the one that was eventually presented, and that it was being done totally in kind. So since it's being done exactly as it was, and it's a general improvement in terms of the status of the existing bulkhead, I have no problem with it.
Yeah, in place and kind. Okay, I'm okay with it also.
I am as well.
Me too.
Me too.
Who's, that's Montauk.
Oh, yeah.
So who wants to do
He
it?
talked the most, he can do it.
Okay, thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you, Member Berger. So in the matter of 32 Star Island Associates LLC, 48 Star Island Road, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-0066-04. 15.1 and 16.1. I'd like to make a motion to allow this application to proceed administratively.
A second.
I'll concur.
I concur.
And I concur as well. Thank you. So we'll move on to our post-hearing decisions. Our first application decision is Kevin McDermott at 3 Merrill's Road, Mamagansett, Suffolk, Mass. Number 300-84-3-18. The size and location is 8,841 square feet at 3 Merrill's Road, Mamagansett. The description is to construct a 160 square foot screen-in porch and allow decking and a hot tub to remain within side yard setbacks and outside of the town's pyramid regulations. 3 variances from 255-1110 and 1 variance from 255-1172D pyramid of the town code and any other relief necessary. The following variances are required. A 1 foot, a 2.2 foot variance are required to allow the porch to be constructed and decking to remain 7 foot and 5.8 feet from side yard lot lines where 8 feet is required. 1 variance of 13 feet is required to allow the hot tub to remain 7 foot from the side yard lot line where 20 foot is required. 1 variance of 12.3 feet is required to allow the porch to be constructed outside the town's pyramid regulations. Zoning District B Residence Zone X flood zone. Secret class is type 2. I believe this is Member Brenneman's.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's been a long period of time between the hearing and the receipt of the information that we requested at the hearing. There's been something of a kind of a troubled and tangled history on this one, and so I'm going to try to unpack it as best I can, but would ask the fellow board members to help me if I forget something that's important. As just noted, there are 4 variances here. 3 of them are dimensional. There's a 1 foot variance for the porch, a 2.2 foot variance for decking, and a 13 foot variance for the hot tub. And then there's also a pyramid, and that's a 12.3 foot variance for the porch being outside of the pyramid requirements. This home was first constructed between 1958 and 1962. It is pre-existing non-conforming. The lot is only 8,841 square feet and only 50 feet wide. I am looking at the most recent sort of as-built survey that was provided by Saskis. That survey is dated December 7th, 2021. During the hearing, the applicant's agent emphasized that it was pre-existing non-conforming, that the variances were minor, that the improvements were over existing improvements already on the property, noted that the pyramid for the porch is actually less of a pyramid than currently exists with the roof line, and offered that as some form of mitigation, that the applicant was willing to stipulate that any further increase in GFA would trigger a requirement for an upgraded septic. The applicant's agent also emphasized the uniqueness of the application, and that is that the land to the immediately north of this property is owned by the same applicant, and the land to the east or the rear of the property is owned by East Hampton Town, specifically trustee land. And then the land to the immediate south, which is also impacted by this, that there is an email of support that was dated October 5th, 2020, from the property owner, and again, in support of it. The planning department detailed the history of the property, which was not great. This entire process was initiated with a roof repair, which the repair was started without a building permit. And as a result, the town issued a stop work order in December of 2020. They then expanded into interior improvements. And again, another stop work order was issued. And finally, the dimensional and pyramid variances were noticed on this application. And the planning department also noted that an upgraded septic would certainly be an important mitigation to offset these variances. Also, was some suggestion that it was possible that the lot to the north and this lot could be merged, and that would reduce or eliminate some of the variances. You'll recall the hearing was challenging because the work being proposed at the time did not match the work that had been done. And we requested a number of things from the applicant, including as-built plans, copies of the building permits, the building inspector opinion on whether these improvements would result in a GFA increase, and if that would trigger a septic upgrade, and then an as-built survey. And so then over the last, what ended up being 7 months, we did receive an updated letter from the applicant in the planning department. It was dated February 22nd, 2022, basically outlined the sequence and his rationale. Honestly, in reviewing that, it was hard to determine whether that letter helped or hurt. I would say it was likely very honest, but it did lead to some additional questions. However, we also received a letter dated February 14th from the agent. Generally, that one reinforced the application and the variances, really didn't introduce anything new. We have the updated Saskis survey, as mentioned, which is December 7th, 2021. We also received an updated pyramid analysis from Saskis that was dated January 29, 2021. We have as-built plans received by the planning department on December 8th, 2021. Those came from an engineer by the name of David Silverberg. And then finally, we received a memo from Eleni dated February 11th, 2022. It reinforced that this was put in front of our building department, and the view was that this construction does not meet the threshold for a mandatory sanitary upgrade, and that the enclosed porch here results in no increase in GFA. Also, that the as-built survey indicates the deck is 5.6 feet from the northern lot line and not 5.8 as noticed, and that the applicant will either have to apply for the greater variance or reduce the size of the deck. So it's taken 7+ months. We now appear to have what I would term a completed application. I'm troubled, I'm sure the board is, by the history of non-compliance here and by the lack of mitigation for the variances requested. I have to say that balances with the fact that the variances are very modest and can be viewed from the uniqueness of this property. The property, as mentioned earlier, is pre-existing, non-conforming. Most improvements will need a variance that any improvements they're going to do on this. And the porch, decking, and hot tub are all over existing improvements. Again, the property to the north is the same owner. The property to the east is the Town of East Hampton trustees. And the property to the south is the support of the application. In terms of mitigation, the applicant's agent did offer a commitment that any future increase in GFA will trigger a new upgraded septic system. I would suggest that we need to make sure that we note that. But purely against our area variance standards, I find, with the exception of the porch variance, which is the one that's incorrect, that this application does meet those standards. Non-compliance is not one of our standards. And so from my point of view, the variances are relatively minor. The property is challenged. There's a lot of unique characteristics here. I find my way to be able to approve, again, all but the variance for the decking, which is a 2.2-foot variance because it's just incorrectly stated on the application. So I would approve the other two-dimensional variances and the pyramid variance, just based on that pyramid being less than the current pyramid that exists on that roof line. And that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Just a question to qualify the decking variance. You're talking about the decking on the north, the variance on the north. Is that correct?
Yeah.
For me, then that's the one that's contiguous to another lot, usable lot,
Yes.
potentially usable lot. Okay. Terry.
I was going to say go to Ed. I have somewhat different view on this. I rewatched the hearing a couple of times, actually. And at the hearing, it was it got a little crazy. And I know the former chair had requested a lot more data that I don't think we ever really got. I think he wanted the plans at the time, the plans that were permitted for the interior work, and then it was stated that we would go to the building inspector to confirm whether all those plans were accurate as far as what they got for the permit and what they actually ended up doing and changing several times. And the whole history of this thing with the upzoning that occurred over time. I don't know where this house was all this time, but as the planner also stated at the time, was that all of these could go away if they just merge those two lots. Right now they're on a seriously non-conforming lot, but it disturbs me that we didn't get. I was hoping that maybe Tim had all that a lot of the data and the information that was requested at the time of the hearing, and the agent asked for 3 months time, and now it took 6-7 months, and it disturbs me, the whole process and the whole sequence of events that have happened. Yes, most of the variances are small. The variance to the north for the pyramid is disturbing. It's large, and those could all be eliminated completely by just merging the two lots, which was pretty much recommended by the planner at the time. So I'm not really in favor of approving it.
We can move on and we'll come
Yeah,
back.
let's see. No.
And you have to abstain, right?
I'm abstaining.
So I have many of the same concerns that were voiced by Member Berger. As was pointed out by Member Brenneman, this was a contentious, I would call it, hearing where some things were pointed out at the time that were disturbing to all the members of the board, particularly the former chair. There was a great deal of discussion about that at the time. And we left that meeting and allowed the applicant to have his representative forward us the information that's been referenced now by both former speakers here, former members of the board who just stated just where we were looking for. We were looking for as-built, we were looking for surveys, we were looking for information about both the history of this process and where we thought it was going to be going. And that was a pretty direct request of them. I would say that without these as-built, without the survey, this is a very easy denial. However, the as-built were put or have been forwarded to the building department, and we did get a new survey. I think the point that was made by Member Brenneman sticks with me, and that is that we're not here to judge non-compliance. I think this is the kind of case that disturbs us because, there was no building permit, and then work continued and continued. There were stop work orders and they kept going. This is just a repetitive offense. On the other hand, that's not really in our jurisdiction here for us to be making a comment on. That's really the building department. We're here to determine whether or not these variances are, as was pointed out by Member Brenneman, insignificant enough or small enough that we, given the other factors, the mutual ownership of the property, some of the distances that are at play here, whether or not we can accept those as such. I would have liked to have had the applicant volunteer to upgrade the septic system at this point and not have it go that we were going to wait for a future application. That was not offered by the applicant. Nonetheless, in a very tough position to be in on this one, I don't like it. I don't like it at all, but I'm not sure that I'm in a position to be able to deny it. I think what I don't like are probably the things that have more to do with building department inspection, compliance, and enforcement. In terms of the variances, in terms of what's being asked for here, and in terms of what we think we're going to get back out of it as a board, somewhat reluctantly, I'm looking to approve this along with Member Brenneman.
If I did comment that I should have said before I was reading this, one of the standards for 255-8-50 is whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue rather than an area variance. And one of those clearly brought out by the planner is that they could have merged the lots and all of those variances would be unnecessary. So, and stick with my denial.
Okay, thank you. I agree. This was a difficult and troubling application. When you look at what Member Brenneman was bringing up, and is the uniqueness to the south with the trustee land would probably, in its most sense, would be a no-brainer because we can say that would truly be uniqueness. But being contiguous to the property to the north, even though the owner represents that it's the same ownership, we're still approving something in perpetuity. That lot can always be sold. I would have too. I do agree that that lot would have been nice to have merged. I don't see, it's not going to happen here, I don't think. So I agree with the assessment that the variances are small. I don't like this application. I think that one of the things that the previous chair was asking for was to whether or not we can evaluate whether a septic system was required or not. I'm satisfied that the circumstance, the fact that if there is an increase in GFA, that would automatically trigger a septic system. I'm satisfied that that's reasonable mitigation. So I think would approve reluctantly with this application.
The history of stop work, non-plans.
No, it's a terrible situation. It's not easy.
Okay, but then it's an undersized lot, well, okay.
Yeah.
Not okay.
Oh, no, we don't need to make a motion.
Question is to council if we have enough information there for you.
Yeah, I do. But the one thing I had a question on was Terry mentioned the type of data that they were hoping to get. And I think Ed answered it with the hope that they would get as-built and surveys and a little bit more detail on the process.
Obviously, a
It
revised
was
survey,
much more.
obviously, a revised survey is an as-built, but
Right.
I think the information was being requested to see what was previous and what was done
Right.
overall.
So I was just trying to confirm that that was the type of information you were looking for
Right,
when
am I
Terry
right?
mentioned
I
it
think
and
that
then it
is
was
correct,
echoed.
yes.
Very good.
I also rewatched the hearing as probably others did because it's
Plenty
been
of-
so long.
I know.
I couldn't remember when it was at
And
first.
you have the reason I'm dissenting. Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Next, we have Kevin Bishop at 21 Old Stone Highway in Springs, up at tax map number 300-063-05-10. Size and location is 42,125 square feet at 21 Old Stone Highway in Springs. The description is to construct an 8-square-foot generator and to allow approximately 60 linear feet of existing slate walkways, approximately 100 linear feet of stone walls, an 80-square-foot brick patio, 2 90-square-foot gravel areas, and with flower boxes. Approximately 250 linear feet of fencing with a gate and 9 square feet foot piece of artwork to remain on a parcel that contains tidal wetlands. A natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-440 and 11 variances in total are required. 7 variances from 255-430. Wetland setbacks, variances of 90 feet, 89 feet, 87.3 feet, 85 feet, 84 feet, 84 feet, and 69.4 feet are required to allow existing slate walkways 10 foot, existing stone walls 11 foot, a proposed generator 12.7 feet, existing fencing 15 feet, an existing brick patio 16 feet, 2 existing gravel areas with flower boxes 16 feet, and an existing art structure 30.6 feet where a 100-foot setback is required. 4 variances from 255-11-74A. Other setbacks and height restrictions, scenic easement setbacks are required. Variances of 10 feet, 3 feet, 8 feet, and 8 feet are required to allow an existing stone wall 0 feet, an existing brick patio 7 feet, 2 existing gravel areas with flower boxes 2 feet, and an existing slate walkway 2 feet where 10 feet is required, and any other relief necessary from the East Hampton Code. Zoning district is A5 residence, AE flood zone, elevation 6, X flood zone as well. 2 Zeker class is type 2. Denise, I think this was yours.
Yes.
Go
It is
ahead.
mine.
A lot of variances to consider.
Huge. And we can discuss this all together. It's a very busy application. During my inspection, I'm going to give a little background. It's just been so many months. But during my inspection, my photos did illustrate the very serious variance, wetland, scenic easement violations that exist on this property. Not to mention, this is in a Springs Historic District, in the Harbor Protection Overlay District. In the rear of the property is Accabonac Harbor, and the front is Pussy's Pond. So after a fire damaged Mr. Bishop's house in 2018, he obtained all the necessary permits to restore the residence in place in kind, which was in keeping with the guidelines for a historic district. On his own, he did the renovation of the garden, not realizing he needed to apply for permits. And with the restoration of the house, he failed to include the generator with his building permit. He then testified he went to the ARB for the generator, and they approved a location in violation of wetland setbacks and the need for a variance. The existing pathways are simply slate laid into the grass, so they can be easily removed. According to Mr. Bishop, the stone walls were merely to put a visual boundary around pathways and the 10-foot retaining wall in the scenic easement was supposedly there to prevent silt and all of the disturbance caused by the installation of the new septic. When I asked Mr. Bishop if there was any town supervision while constructing this wall, he said there wasn't a requirement to put in a new retaining wall. He did this on his own. He did it from an aesthetic point of view because it was an attractive decorative curve. Mr. Bishop did note if he needs to take it down, he would, and rebuild it 3 feet further back, because I believe it's in a scenic easement. But, you know, if you approve that, it also would require an 89-foot variance. So during construction of the house, he did a wetland revegetation and planting plan, which was part of the permit requirements and approved after inspection. Other items were decorative in terms of the gardening. The gravel paths were laid out around some herb beds, and they're just laid on the water permeable matting into the soil. The brick is just laid onto the water permeable matting onto the soil. The sculpture, again, was a decorative piece of gardening. It can be removed or placed in a more conforming location. He has not yet applied to the ARB for any type of fencing. Building inspectors made him aware of all the issues. Now, before I go further, I really have to commend Mr. Bishop on his submission. And I really appreciated the fact that he gave this a lot of thought because there's just a lot going on here. He is agreeing to remove the stone walls bordering the wetland and scenic easement and plant the bank with the same mix of ferns and grasses already found on the other slopes of the gardens. He's agreeing to remove the deer fencing bordering the wetland and scenic easement, remove the arbor towards the front of the property. Just going to take out my photos. Did I not take these out? Move the arbor, which is towards the front of the property, and replace it with a split rail fence. He's also willing to lower the mesh fence at the front of the property to 4 feet in line with the height, which he's entitled to anyway. I mean, he can just get a building permit today. He's willing to reshape the small stone wall bordering a flower bed at the rear of the property so that it no longer encroaches into the 10-foot setback for the scenic easement. Well, that you could actually agree to if it weren't for the fact that you'd also have to be granting an 89-foot wetland setback. He's also saying he'll reshape the small brick patio by the chimney breast so that it no longer encroaches on a 10-foot scenic easement. And what makes that difficult is, again, you would be granting a very large variance. In terms of the generator, I have to honestly say I have sympathy for that situation because he did go to the building department. He did properly, do what he was supposed to do in terms of getting permission. I think that the ARB, and what's really interesting is his original location, if you read the TAM, was to be in the front of the residence, and the ARB, because it was a historic district, I think, was looking at it from an aesthetic point of view and put it to the rear, not realizing they were in violation of NRSP and variance standards. The scenic easements to allow, and number 2 on his letter, the scenic easement variance is to allow a small section of slate and a small section of gravel to remain. Again, if you gave him that scenic easement, you would be having to grant an 84-foot wetland setback. The wetland setback variance is to allow the sculpture and the slate paths, the reduced length in the stone wall for 1 flower bed, and the reduced area of brick. Again, these are not the minimum variances necessary. So for these reasons, and I really want board input on this because, like I said, this is a very complicated application. But in terms of the variance standards, it's self-created. It's not the minimum necessary. The variances are substantial and will change the character of the neighborhood. It's not in harmony with the surrounding area. In terms of the historic district guidelines, which he's smack in the middle of, you maintain the architectural integrity that contributes to the overall setting. This house is surrounded by intact historical buildings: Springs Store, Springs Community Presbyterian Church, Springs School, Ashwell Hall, Charles Parsons Blacksmith Shop. And as we speak, there are renovations going on in the Springs Library and the church. And they're all, following proper procedure in terms of what they do, because it is a historic district. The HPOD, Section 255-370, the purpose of HPOD is to maintain and improve surface water quality in East Hampton's major harbors, creeks, and ponds. And in this case, you not only have Accabonac Harbor, you have Pussy's Pond. The NERSIP at 255-540, the application doesn't conform to the town code definition of special permit use. The application will not be in harmony with and promote the general purposes of zoning, and the application will not be compatible with the surroundings and with the character of the neighborhood. The application does not conform to the town code definition of special permit use. The variances are determined not to be effective in preventing loss or potential damage to the natural features on the site. The protection of the wetlands, 255-430, says construction is prohibited within or near wetlands. No building structure shall be erected, constructed, placed, enlarged, or reconstructed within or on a wetland. I really would like input from the board. I have no problem approving the generator. I don't think that was Mr. Bishop's fault. But this is such a sensitive site, and it's not, and the variances are really substantial. And this is a very sensitive area. And with that, I'd like to have everyone else be included in how they feel. I appreciate your comments.
Do you want to give the date of the survey?
The date of the survey.
The latest?
I have it in
February
front of
4th.
me.
I think
February
it's
4th, 2022.
Okay. Yes, that one.
February 4th, 2022.
2022.
Okay.
And to know, and Denise, you're on the right track here too. We have probably three options here: to approve all, deny all, or approve
Yeah.
partials.
I don't know what to do. So,
Did you address these, the piece of art?
yes.
She did.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, who wants to go
Well,
next?
I'll go next.
Okay,
I
go.
actually agree with everything you said. I'm looking at my list,
Very
what I
thorough,
came
very
up
thorough.
with. And
See that?
two variances that I am looking to approve. The generator, basically for the same reason that you had. It's going to be 12.7 feet from the wetlands. And so that's what, 87.3 variance, huge variance. But however, because it was directed by the ARB, even though we don't have to stick with that, and the fact that it is for generator pad and it is the historic district, I would look to approve that one. And the other one that I am looking to approve is the artwork. It's 30.6 feet from the wetlands, so it's a 69.4 variance. And please check my numbers because this was a little wild. As far as all the others, the fence, he's making 4 feet. I'm okay with that. He's taking out the arbor, making it a 4-foot gate. And that wasn't one of the original ones anyway, I believe. But I feel the same way about the partials, that he wants to do a partial stone wall removal and a partial brick patio removal to bring it 10 feet away from the scenic easement. However, that still leaves huge variances from the wetlands, which I believe, if my calculations are right, 84-foot variance for the gravel areas and 90 feet for the slate walkways. I also was looking at the pictures, and one of the gravel areas where he had the herb bed almost looks like he could cut back the gravel part get it out of the scenic easement variance. But that still doesn't buy much. I will buy a couple of feet on 84-foot variance needed to retreat from the wetlands. No, I don't know that another couple of feet would really change my mind on that. So I'm pretty much just looking to approve those two variances, but also would like to.
Generator and sculpture.
Sculpture.
All right, just wanted to.
And 12-foot fence.
Well, the 4-foot fence he's entitled.
He's entitled to.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's really
It's
in the front.
He's entitled to that.
Tim?
Okay.
Yeah, it's a unique situation, right? There, his property is surrounded by two sides by Acquabonic Harbor, and the front of his property has got historical ramifications. His scenic easement, which is enormous on this property, I think covers three sides of this property. So very little here that doesn't have some impact. I also give him a lot of credit because he put a lot of thought and he redid the
Absolutely.
variance requests.
Yeah.
So he did listen and he tried to come back with as much as he could possibly do. I think I like exactly what Terry said. And I allowing the generator, which is associated with the drain field of his septic. I think that's really important that we permit. I think the artwork is pretty benign relative to everything else. But, this is an example of a property where it really doesn't match up with permitting an awful lot of stuff to be done. I would say most of these things aren't major. I mean, they're all sort of small things. But I don't know how to condition this on that basis. So I'm good with first two members' recommendations here.
Yeah, I agree with the assessment made by my other board members. This is a unique spot. I think that the fact that it is, as pointed out by Member Brenneman, just about completely surrounded with conditions that would restrict almost anything being done. I think when you see the site and you visit it, I think that in defense of the applicant here, they did a very reasonable and nice and aesthetic job. Putting a walkway from one portion of your property to a garden is a perfectly logical thing to do. And some of the other things that went on, I think that the wall that he described as having put out in a curve to kind of hold back what was a plateau where that artwork is set and where some other septic has been done. This is all done well and done nicely. And I think it's difficult when we go to a site like this and see that there's nothing that's been done here that's egregious or seems to be done in a way that did not show respect for the property and the land that he has there. But the fact is, there's almost nothing that can be done here without looking for some sort of variance approval. What can happen on a parcel that is like this one, set as it is? It's a difficult one. And I do think, in fairness, that they've done a nice, respectable, and presentable job. Unfortunately, everything that's been pointed out here calls for such massive variances that I don't know that we're in a position just to aesthetically approve something because we like what they did, when in fact we're asking for 80 and 90 and large variances, 90-foot variances. I will agree though with both the members Brenneman and Berger that the generator pad is certainly not something that was in any way a problem. If he goes to the town and he's asked for permission and he gets ARB, I don't know if it would have crossed my mind that maybe the ZBA wouldn't like this later on. I've pretty much heard it from the town. And I think the fact that it would not want to see that placed in the front of the house anyway, there's an aesthetic consideration there that I think we should respect. And using the words of Member Brenneman, I think that the artwork is fairly benign. I don't think that it's probably one of the easier things for him to move, and we're going to allow him to leave it there. Nonetheless, I don't think that there's a reason here to ask him to remove that. I will say, just to reiterate, I think that everything that was done here was nicely done, and I think the effort on the part of the applicant to work with the board and to come back and to try to assess what he had and to make some, reasonable recommendations of his own, accommodations on his own, are very good and very strong. However, I'm going to side with my other board members and say I'm looking to deny the variance by the application, except for where it applies to the generator and the art at this time.
Thank you. I too I do agree. I just want to reiterate that this is Accabonac Harbor. The town in its wisdom has set forth an amazing code called the Natural Special Resources Permit Code that is set to protect these resources from not only their health and health, but also from a character of the town as a whole as well. And this makes this town unique. And I think that when we also put on easements on properties like this, at a minimum, because easements have to be in conformity at all times. We can't encroach on them or within the setbacks of those easements. So I agree with the logic with my members, and I too would go along with that recommendation.
Do we need to like go over the variant? Like he's removing the stone wall, so that's gone.
It sounds
The
like the
fence.
only
I
thing.
think,
So it's not going to be.
no, I think
Is
we're
the
denying
generator-
that.
I think you're denying that.
Denying all of that, yeah.
And if he's
Okay.
going to move them and do whatever, he's got to come to us with another.
Different application.
Right.
Okay, so did I do my math for nothing? Did I? I don't know. I mean,
I'm
we
very
still need to
clear.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very clear on what you're approving and that everything else is
Okay.
I mean, we're
As long as
approving
you're
the
clear
sculpt-
on it.
the
Yes,
sculptor,
plus you'll see a draft determination, so if there's anything wrong.
like approving the generator and the sculptor.
Yes,
Yes.
got it.
Yeah, I just want to make one point, and it was something that Member Savory said, and that is that there are other projects going on where the applications have been filed and the proper procedures are in place and are being followed in that work. And that's probably something that we have to think about on a regular basis here. So when you purchase a property like that, there are some, obvious restrictions moving forward. And so just to reiterate or to reinforce what was said by Member Savory, I think that's an important point in making this decision.
And you're referring to the other projects going on in the surrounding properties,
Yeah,
the library,
yeah, that's
okay,
right.
very good,
Ones that were cited by Member Savory.
got it.
Thank you.
Roy, can we take a 2-minute break so I can go grab a sweater?
Sure.
Bring a bunch of
I'm
them.
like.
How many sweaters do you have?
It was so hot in here before we.
I know, now I'm like, shiver.
I got to throw a log on the fire.
Why don't I just shut this off?
See, look at this. When did you
That's
tell me
43
today? I just got this.
Because Bishop is.
You know why?
Okay, that's why.
Because I don't get, you have to call my house. I don't get I just got
There's
this.
two of them. There's
Just
one on this
literally.
side.
Yes,
That
just
was
now.
quick,
I
huh?
got all these now because I'm in this area that has a cell signal.
Oh, that's right. You know the
Look at this, my
cell signal.
sister, my cousin. Where it is?
It's the one here.
Everywhere.
Oh, it's right next to me.
But I don't have, I'm just getting all these now because I don't have a signal. Look at this. It's crazy.
Oh, that's right. I didn't realize that. See?
Yeah. Yes, really. Thank God they're not emergencies, right?
Yeah. Okay. Look at my agenda. I think I need to put it, attached it to Bishop. Has to be there.
you. Mine is in my book.
Thank you.
Okay, ready to go? All right, so our next decision to make is Gary Davis and John McGinn at 275 3 Mile Harbor Hog Creek Highway in Springs, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-075-01-32.2. The size and location is 100,020 square feet at 275 3 Mile Harbor Hog Creek Highway in Springs. The description is to construct a dock consisting of a 4-foot by 40-foot fixed catwalk, 3-foot by 20-foot aluminum ramp, a 4-foot by 24-foot floating dock on a parcel of land containing coastal bluffs and adjacent to surface tidal waters. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the town code. The zoning district is A2 Residence VE and X flood zones. Secret class is type 2. Once again, I think this is in member Denise's.
Yes, it is.
Go for it.
Okay. During my field inspection, I wondered why section 255-5-51H3, which is, does the dock comply with dimensional standards and alternatives for new docks, wasn't noticed, because I felt at the time that it should have been. I also asked for 255-4-51-4, which is, does the dock comply with environmental protections regarding public use, degradation of water, safe navigation, and effect on shellfishing? And I felt that that should have been addressed in the notice as well. Mr. Whalen went on to give a presentation noting that the application has been pending since 2020, but it does go back to 2018 when the first soundings were taken to see if this was a viable project. This does have the approval of other agencies, including the town trustees. Mr. Whalen addressed 255-551H, noting that the dock is located at the minimum point necessary to reach the specified water depth in the town code. The planning department has recommended shifting the dock south by about 40 feet to reach a depth of water in a shorter distance. Their attorney stated there is a shoal in that location, and any boat that is docking there becomes uncomfortably close to that shoal water. Moving to that location would also entail locating the stairs that come down towards the northern end of the property. The dock and ramp will be removed in the winter, but is not intended to remove the catwalk. No intentions to remove pilings, and the catwalk is needed to support oyster cages, which are a part of the trustee mitigation. Mr. Whalen noted the reason for this project is the applicants having 2 young children and feels the rig and pulley line would not be safe, so the determination was made to have a dock. The decisions run with the land and are there for perpetuity, and the natural resource special standards are outlined in the code. Brent Rayner from Nelson Pope and Voorhees analyzed the existing dock and addressed natural resource standards. He noted that the primary reason for the placement of the dock was due to the existing location of the stairs to the north. One board member expressed, since it is an NRSP, you have to look at other locations. An alternative would be to remove the stairs, relocate them, and bring the dock into a more conforming location. Mr. Rayner further necessitated the reasoning behind not locating the dock to the south. He felt that in reaching out to 80 feet, which at the time was 80 feet, they've now reduced it to 70, is a standard set in the code. I feel that this application, this dock as designed, does not meet the NRSP standards because it is not the minimum length necessary to get to a 3-foot depth at mean low water. If we could pull up that survey, is it there? Okay. If you go to the survey that Eleni has pulled up, if you go approximately 40 feet south of the proposed location by the stairs, you only need to go west 40 feet to meet the required depth. It's just not a location they're willing to do it in, but it is, you are able to do it there. The other thing is subsection H2 states that the board shall have considered all reasonable alternatives, a mooring or a rig and pulley system. And for these reasons, I feel that this application does not meet the standard. We also are in an HPOD area, and 3 Mile Harbor has been designated by the town and state as a significant coastal fish and wildlife habitat. Potential impacts of this activity on this ecosystem have to be carefully scrutinized. So I'm interested in what my other fellow board members and how they feel.
Who wants to go next?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm largely in agreement with Member Savarese. There were several things that I thought that the planning department highlighted here for us, and that she's already touched on them. One is that if we're looking to approve, I think we go back to the standard of asking ourselves, what's the minimum we can allow here and achieve the applicant's goals? I think it was clearly stated that by moving this dock, the proposed dock 40 feet down along the property line, that we could achieve 3 foot in depth with half the distance out into the waterway, which I think is an obvious and immediate improvement on the proposal. I thought that the fact that she pointed out in the town code that we are required with 255-5-51H-3 to consider all reasonable alternatives that a dock would allow safe access to a boat. There's a bulkhead already in this area, which allows a certain amount of access to begin with. The fact that this dock was, the applicant knew that we were not in favor of an 80-foot dock and came back and said, well, they could reduce it by 10 feet. That's down to 70 feet. That's still 30 feet beyond what the 40-foot a suggestion that we were discussing at the time. For me, I think that's pretty much at the heart of what's proper here. The dock, should not be sent out any further than we should not be approving a dock that's any larger than has to be, than is absolutely necessary. And I think that what we have here is there is an alternative, and it's just a conscious effort on the part of the applicant to say they don't choose to consider the alternative. And I think the alternative is a realistic one. And I think that the position that the planning department took on this, their recommendations were strong in this area. They spent a lot of time. We got a detailed EAS on this, and we had a chance to study that. There was a great deal of material came from the applicant, and there was some, very effective photos and sketches and drawings. I think they could just as effective if we were doing a 40-foot dock and not an 80-foot dock. So for me, I'm in agreement with Board Member Savarese. I think she covered a lot of that. It really is not much of a discussion for me beyond, was there an alternative? Could it be pursued by the applicant? And should we recommend that that's what's going to happen? And by denying this, that's what we're recommending. So I'm looking to deny this application.
Thank you. Tim?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking about this. I rewatched our hearing. I also watched the trustee hearing from October 25th to try to understand that process. I will say that during that hearing or meeting, it was referenced that there may have been 6 of those where the applicants had been in front of them. So a full disclosure, I did not watch all 6. I watched the last one, which is where they decided. So that we have this represented, I think, correctly. What's in front of us today now is to construct a dock of a 4 by 30.6 foot fixed catwalk, and then a 3 by 20 aluminum ramp and a 4 by 24 floating dock. So it totals now 70.6 feet, as mentioned. I think we should also mention that the applicants offered mitigation with respect to this. They also own the property to the north. They've offered to covenant that there be no additional bulkheading or dock on that property. They've offered to make a contribution to the oyster seeding program, and they have also attached or offering to allow oyster cages to be attached to the bottom of the catwalk, again in support of the town's oyster program. Planning department presented quite a lengthy response on this one. Among them are that this is one area that within the town or within the trustees' purview where they permit docks. However, it was pointed out that this was the first application for a new dock in 20 years. I actually went back and in the trustee meeting, I think it's actually 35 years. So since 1987, there has not been a dock. We know that the code is designed to limit docks in the size of docks that we work with, and that also we are responsible to consider all reasonable alternatives. And as noted, there was a recommendation that if there was to be a dock here, that the most conforming location would be in the middle of the property. There was also a concern voiced about the impacts of pilings because they're not a natural presence. We should also note that the latest proposal, initially there was 13 pilings proposed. The latest proposal is that 11 are proposed. 8 of those related to the catwalk, which I would note is permanent, and then 3 associated with the removal of the floating dock. We should also put on the record that the planning department does not think that this application meets the standards. So, as mentioned, I watched the trustees debate, and I want to say I have great respect for that body. And they had a thoughtful but somewhat contentious debate on this issue, ultimately resulting in a 5-3 vote to approve, but also with a number of comments that they need to go back and study this, potentially to put forward something. It appeared on my review of the meeting that the offer of mitigation, they used the word sterilization of the property to the north, and the investments in the shellfish and shellfish program, they viewed it as significant mitigation. We should also say, by all accounts, this applicant appears to be a very good steward of the property. We saw the buffer that they had in place, really beautifully done. I don't think, any of our comments would in any way question the applicant's motives in this regard. And I think we should just put that out there. Relative to codes, I agree with Member Savarese with regard to, it should be 255, 420. It also should be 255, 551. I also noted that within the body of 255, 551, that there is reference to another code that would apply, and that's 551E, which is coastal structures. And I'd like to make some comments specific to that, but I'll get to that in a minute. So, I've thought about this, and I come back to questions like, why after 35 years are we as a community allowing new private docks on 3 Mile Harbor? And, one of the things that really concerns me about this project is the